Share, we're nice.
We're ready. Yeah, I'm doing the intro. The other guy didn't show up.
How you doing, Mary?
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Art Sinkler, and I'm Vice President of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to thank you for attending or watching on Rogers TV the fourth and final of the Chamber's 4 candidate debates for the Region of Waterloo ridings for the June 7th provincial election. We have had 4 debates, as I mentioned, Kitchener-South Hespeler on Monday, Kitchener-Conestoga on Tuesday, and the riding of Waterloo last night. And I can say, having witnessed a number of these debates over the years, the Chamber has been doing this for the last number of years, we have had some excellent debates. You know, I think, Diane, as you probably remember, when you were getting briefed, when you went in the cabinet, they tell you it's question period, not answer period. But, you know, our debates have been great. We've been getting some really good answers from all the candidates. So, you know, hopefully we have a great event tonight. Today's forum is important to our members and the community so they can hear directly from our prospective representative, who will talk about the issues that are impacting our members, the business more broadly, the business community more broadly, and as we inform ourselves ahead of the June 7th provincial general election. We want to thank our partners who are supporting this series, Rogers TV, CLAC, and Union Gas. Special thanks to our friends at 570 News and our host, Jeff Picca, who has just done yeoman's work for the last 4 nights. He's been standing here firing the questions away for 2 hours, and he's still standing, and he's still back. Also, big thank you here to Kyle Priestley from the event firm, who has been doing a great job in the sound. Some of you may know, Kyle used to be a sound man for the heavy metal band Helix. No, sorry, you're wrong. They were around in the 70s. Kyle wasn't around in the 70s, so that's not true. But anyways, Jeff, on behalf of the Chamber, thank you again for your work, and I will now turn the forum over to you.
Thanks again, Art, for everything, for having me come to do this. It's been a pleasure, and yes, I am still standing. And Kyle, I'll try not to put you through quite so much work as when Art's on the mic here, so I'll try to level out the tones a bit. Thanks again, Art, and thank you, everyone, for being able to make it today. Here to the Victoria Park Pavilion, a special welcome to our audience again watching on Rogers Cable 20. As Art mentioned, this is the final of 4 candidate forums organized by the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce in advance for the June 7th provincial election. The debates for Kitchener-South Hespeler, Kitchener-Conestoga, and Waterloo were conducted on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, and they've all provided great discussion on issues of interest to Waterloo Region voters, and we hope to provide some more for you as well today. Now, the format for the event will begin with 90-second introductory remarks from each candidate, followed by questions in priority areas identified by the Greater KW Chamber. Those portfolios are jobs in the economy, education, healthcare, municipal services, and accountability. The questions will be asked in a rotation, and the moderator reserves the rights to terminate answers where appropriate. We haven't run into that yet, but just be aware that if we do run on long, I may have to cut you off, which I certainly do not want to do. But again, we haven't run into that issue yet. Also, after all 4 candidates have answered a particular question, a candidate can ask for a rebuttal on the comments made by any of the other 3 candidates. Once again, the moderator reserves the discretion on whether to allow a rebuttal or to terminate the discussions when required. But of course, I'll try to allow the debate to go on as long as we can. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will be allowed 1 minute for closing remarks, which will proceed in reverse order from the opening remarks. So just before we began today, we drew from a hat to pick the order that you now see the candidates in. So we'll begin the introductory remarks heading this way down the table, and then at the end, when we close, we'll begin at the other end. So, candidates number 1, Diane Ver Neil from the Liberal Party, will begin with 90 seconds for opening remarks. Diane.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone. So, for over 3 decades, I worked as a news journalist in our community. The stories that were always the most gratifying to cover were those where you could make a difference, a real difference, by helping someone or by putting the spotlight on a problem that needed to be fixed. When I was first elected in 2014, I vowed to put my energy and my skills into doing the same as an MPP. I have worked as your champion for Kitchener Centre. So I've been knocking on doors with my wonderful team, and what we're doing when we're going door to door is we're sharing this very long info sheet, and it shows you what I've done for you in the past 4 years. And here's some of it. We have put significant funding into our local hospitals, 4 new schools and renovations and repairs to many others. We've invested in a long list of companies in Waterloo Region that have literally added thousands and thousands of local jobs. We've made historic investments in transit, including a commitment to fund a new Kitchener transit hub. We're building a new GO train station with a large parking garage in Breslau, and we are the only party to commit to both all-day two-way GO train service and Canada's first high-speed rail. We're also investing in affordable housing, social service groups, and the arts. Our economy right now is booming. We have the lowest unemployment rate in almost 20 years. It's even lower in Waterloo Region. So now's the time to bring in a living wage, as we did. We are covering tuition for low and middle income students, and we brought in free medicine for youth, and we're extending it to seniors. But I'm very worried of how a hard turn to the right or veering to the left is going to hurt our community. We need to move forward. We need a strong, experienced local voice to protect what we've built here. With your support, I am ready to continue as your champion of Kitchener Centre on June the 7th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Up next will be Lora Mae Lindo from the NDP. Laura.
Hi there, thank you. So while I've been canvassing in Kitchener Centre, it's become increasingly clear that people are tired. People are tired of 15 years of Liberal cuts and freezes to essential support services. They're tired of 15 years of Liberal inaction and promises that never amount to real change for them. They're tired of bad implementation strategies by the Liberals as well. So this election is actually between the NDP and the Conservatives. But people are also scared. They're scared of Doug Ford and his plan for the people. People that don't resemble the everyday people that live in Kitchener Centre. People are calling my campaign office, which is located right in downtown Kitchener, every single day, and they want to get to know me a little bit more because they need help. So here goes. I'm a mother of 3. I live in Kitchener Centre. I understand the need firsthand for a good balance between work and life, daycare, public schooling in Kitchener Centre. On a professional note, I've worked with internationally renowned youth and transition scholars. I've worked with teacher educators, poverty reduction advocates, those that work with the homeless. And when I was at Ryerson, I worked in the Diversity Institute, which is located in the Ted Rogers School of Management, providing support to small, medium, and large corporations across all sectors. I understand the need for a real poverty reduction strategy that works and is well implemented. I understand the need to make more effective decisions on educational funding, curriculum development for every student in Kitchener, whether they're young or older. And currently, I'm the Director of Diversity and Equity at Laurier, where I know the impact of Liberal freezes to the post-secondary sector. But don't worry, there's hope. My master's and PhD in education, in fact, and my work at Laurier have allowed me to gain skills that by far surpass many politicians because I understand how to implement change for the better.
Thank you. And next will be Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Rogers for hosting us tonight, and thank you to those joining us here and for those watching at home. This is a very important election. The reason that I'm running is similar to the reason I think people are engaged in this election. Like so many others, I feel that life has become unaffordable for families in Kitchener and across Ontario. The experience that I have gained as a resident of Kitchener Centre over the last 35 years, working as a community advocate and serving the public within government, makes me particularly unique to tackle the important issue. Knocking over 12,000 doors in our community, people are responding positively to our platform laid out at ontariopc.ca, which tackles affordability issues while respecting the taxpayer dollar and protecting the public services we hold dear. We'll reduce the hydro costs by 12%, reduce the middle class income tax by 20%, 10 cents off a litre of gas, up to 75% tax rebate for childcare up to the age of 15, 30,000 long-term care beds to reduce the wait times at hospitals, $1.9 billion in mental health spending, no provincial tax for minimum wage earners, and dental care for seniors, low-income seniors. Ontarians deserve accountability and respect. I'm prepared to work hard for our community. Thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And now will be Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me here today and for everybody who has taken the time out of their schedule to attend. My name is Stacy Tankard. I'm the Green Party candidate here in Kitchener Centre. This is not my first election, it's my third. And through those 3 elections, the one consistent thing that I have been hearing is the desire for strong change. Not the type of change that just means replacing one party for another, but the change in how we do politics. I'm hearing about a strong need that people see in politicians to do things better, to start working for people through collaboration and cooperation. This is something that I do every day and with my nonprofit. And through my PhD in neuroscience, I also developed an understanding and appreciation for the need to have evidence-based decision-making. I understand the complex issues that face us today, and I think that we can do better. We can attend to the needs of the people in our communities without incurring huge deficits that put us further behind. I want to lead us into the future, and as your representative, I would work hard to meet the needs of the people here in this community, which I truly adore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We'll now get into the questions in this debate. We'll first begin with under the portfolio of healthcare. So we are going to continue with the rotation we have started here. So Lora Mae Lindo, you will handle the first question, and we will just continue the rotation until everyone has answered, and then there'll be the opportunity for rebuttal after that. Question number 1 in the healthcare portfolio. In a recent Globe and Mail article, Michael Litt from the tech firm Vidyard indicated Waterloo Region needs a new teaching hospital. As an MPP for this region, would you advocate for this facility? Once again, we'll begin with Lora Mae Lindo of the Ndp.
Thank you. I think it's really important for us to recognize how in a community that has 5 universities and colleges, how important it is to have research joined to our everyday lives. I think it's actually one of the biggest issues that we see on university campuses. So again, thinking about being the Director of Diversity and Equity, one of the biggest issues is linking theory to practice. I think we have to advocate for teaching hospitals. I think that we have to find a way to recognize that that also opens up opportunities for jobs for other students, for placements for other students to gain more experience on the ground, and to also support the non-stop wait times that people have when they do go into healthcare facilities here in Kitchener.
So, thank you. And now we will go to Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC Party.
Thank you for the question. I think we have two wonderful hospitals here in our riding, and I think our healthcare workers are working harder than they can possibly work, and I think we need to support them. And our healthcare system's been neglected, and we see the hallway medicine happening, and Ontarians deserve better. I absolutely support the concept of a teaching hospital on top of the commitments that we've made to put in more long-term care beds and support spending on mental health and just improve our healthcare system altogether. It's a very important issue in our riding. Thank you.
Now to Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. I agree that the idea of bringing a teaching hospital is one that could benefit this community, particularly because of all of our secondary school institutions. So that's one way to start addressing some of the healthcare needs that we face. I think that there are other ways. Of course, building new hospitals can be expensive, and so I think that we also have to look at how we're providing our healthcare to people to ensure that we're doing it in the most effective way possible. For example, the Green Party advocates really strongly that we push for health promotion in addition for just caring for people who are already ill. And this is something that can provide a little bit of relief in those in the process of dealing with some of the acute care needs that we are facing that we're so behind on.
Thank you. And now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jeff. I think it's a really intriguing idea that was put out by Michael Litt. I know Michael, and he likes to weigh in on a variety of topics, and this is a very intriguing idea. If you're going to attract talent to the region, having a teaching hospital is certainly a way to do that. I can recall when our own chamber was involved a few years ago in trying to bring doctors and specialists to the region. And if you've got a teaching hospital, it's actually easier to do that. One thing that I can tell you that if we are going to try to do this, you need to have a strong voice with a proven track record. I have shown that I can do that. I attracted $7 million for St. Mary's Hospital to build a new catheter lab. I brought in $5.5 million for Grand River Hospital to build a new cancer radiation unit. This is for an MRI suite. And I fought very hard to ensure that people under 25 have free pharma care. We're extending that to people over 65, and we've brought in a new dental and drug program for all Ontarians who are currently not covered at work. It's very disappointing that the NDP and the Conservatives voted against all of those initiatives, but I want you to know that as your strong local representative, I fought for all of these healthcare initiatives. We were successful in doing this, and I'm committed to having better healthcare in our region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal, if anyone chooses so. If not, we can.
How does that work? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you just?
Yeah. If you no, we go in kind of any open order. So if you would like a rebuttal, just kind of wave me down and I'll make it. So yes, Lora Mae.
Thank you. I just wanted to actually speak to something that Diane just expressed. I want to make it clear that it's not that the NDP voted against things that are good for the community. It's that the Liberals provided a fiscal plan at the last minute that, to be honest, was filled with more promises. When I'm going door to door and I'm canvassing, people are saying, that's great that everybody's promising something, but what's happening now? I was talking to somebody who went to the hospital and was in hospital for 24 hours. 24 hours. He went home after not being really seen well because people were still rushed, and his illness got worse. He ended back in the hospital. So given that we're talking about things that people have done, my question becomes, what is happening in practice? There's a disconnect. And what I do believe is that the NDP is taking seriously what the constituents in Kitchener Centre are actually saying. And so it's not about just saying okay to more promises. It's about creating a plan that will bring change, that is strategic, that makes sense, and that speaks to core issues that are happening in this community.
Diane, you have the opportunity to rebuttal.
Okay. Lora Mae, I'm not certain what you mean by last minute, but our health care plan, they are very carefully researched. We consult with stakeholders, they're costed, and we move them forward. And they're paid for through our budgets, and over the past 4 years, all of these very important initiatives for healthcare in our community and right across Ontario, the NDP and the Conservatives consistently voted against these. So it's disappointing when I see that happen. I would have thought that the NDP would have supported pharmacare, free medicine for children and for seniors, but they did say no to that.
Okay, yeah, we can have time for one more quick rebuttal. Is it just Mary? Yes, absolutely.
I'd just like to say that I feel that the Liberals have had 15 years to work on the healthcare system that's very broken, and I have family friends that are in the medical system, doctors and nurses, and they feel like they're not being heard. And I just feel, although the promises are made, the promise is broken, and I feel that there'll be more promises that are broken should the Liberals get elected. Thank you.
Okay, we do have more under the healthcare portfolio, so I do imagine if there is any more topics that can be brought up, getting into the next questions. Question number 2 will first be addressed by Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC party. That question is quite simply, could you outline your party's position on pharmacare reform? Mary Hannon Thorne.
Absolutely. So we're not looking to change the commitment for the OHIP Plus. We're going to keep that. And like I said, we're going to work on the broken healthcare system by adding more beds and spending on mental health, which is so terribly important to our community, especially with the frontline workers, the paramedics, the police officers that are working so hard with the opioid crisis. Help is on its way. Thank you.
Now to Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
The Green Party also would advocate to maintain the current proposed spending on pharmacare, as well as to work with the federal government to move forward with the plan that they have proposed for full coverage on pharmacare for everyone.
Now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. Well, we introduced the Pharmacare plan. This is free medicine, 4,400 medicines for people who are under 25. We're extending it to people who are over 65. We are bringing in a drug and dental program for people who do not have coverage at work. And in fact, our previous health minister, Dr. Eric Hoskins, was hired away by the federal government to look at implementing a national pharmacare program. In terms of the healthcare system overall, I would say to the Conservative Party, saying that you want to fix the system. When the Conservatives were in power last, they fired 6,000 nurses. I remember as a reporter doing stories on this. Many of them went to find jobs in Texas and California, Arizona, and New York State. So we all know how the Conservatives handled the healthcare system. I would say that under a Liberal government, we have kept pace, we have continued to invest, and we have continued to hire. And we do support a pharmacare plan.
Lora Mae Lindo of the Ndp.
Thank you. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but I have to say that while all of these things have been implemented, day after day after day, when I'm on the doors, people are telling me that it's not working. And so the NDP has a plan to have universal pharmacare. The concept is that we've looked at research, we've worked with pharmacists and doctors and nurses, and we have 125 drugs that are highly prescribed. That would be the beginning of the universal pharmacare plan. After that, we would roll out the rest. What worries me is that I've been speaking to seniors who have said, okay, if a plan helps those that are 25 and under receive free prescriptions, what about us? We actually need a lot more. And so that is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about a plan that's universal for all Ontarians. There's also dental care that would be covered. The idea of supporting mental health needs to be much more streamlined. Currently, mental health supports are kind of found all over. And so advocating for a mental health ministry would be extremely important, and going back one more step to recognizing the problems that we have at hand. I can't actually hand the mic over with also reminding people that any kinds of hiring that we have right now is a consequence of ongoing problems, over 15 years of problems, and prior to that, other cuts, as Diane had mentioned. So one of the most recent commitments was to hire 4,500 nurses, and I know that we're working towards more frontline staff, et cetera.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. Okay, we'll begin here with Diane.
So our plan is in place for pharmacare. It is being extended to people over 65. Our plan covers 4,400 medicines, including complex medications and cancer medicines. The Ndp plan covers 126. So 126 versus 4,400.
Mary?
Thank you. I just want to point out that the Liberals have also cut nurses, and I don't remember in Ontario's history having hallway health care. This is new to us, and it's wrong.
Okay, back to Diane Ver Neil.
I'm not certain where you're getting your information from. I would urge you, Mary, to go to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. We've actually added 28,000 nurses since 2003. We've added 6,000 more physicians, and we've opened up 10,000 new long-term care beds. And again, I encourage you to go to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to come up to date on that information.
Lora Mae Lindo.
So I just wanted to add a little teeny thing. It's not working. So as much as we talk about what's been included and what everybody has done, why is it that I'm going door to door and it's not working? So what if we take a step away from this idea of sort of attacking each other about what has happened and that kind of stuff, and think about the future. In the future, I want to be able to campaign and canvass and have people say, wow, I want to make this even better, as opposed to, I can't believe that I'm being treated in the hallway, which is what I'm hearing. I can't believe that my illness got worse, and now I'm in more serious jeopardy than I was when I first started. Or one of the ones that got me thinking all night was somebody who said, I'm just going to avoid asking for help. That can't be the way that we actually roll in this city. It's also important to recognize that many, many people, because of the way that our healthcare system, it's so broken and so fractured, will literally not have access to anything because they can't afford it. I had somebody say to me that they had to choose between their prescription medication and how expensive that was, even under the plan that we apparently have right now, and groceries. Nobody should have to make that choice.
Okay, thank you. And briefly, Diane?
Sorry, I would have to disagree with you. Saying that our healthcare system in this community and across Ontario is, as you say, fractured and broken. My mother broke her hip a year ago, and she received excellent care. She cannot say enough good about her nurses and doctors who took care of her. And for all of the people who are working in our healthcare industry here in Ontario, I have nothing but praise for them. They are not running a broken and fractured system. They are stalwarts, they are committed individuals, and I think that compared to other jurisdictions around the world, we have an excellent healthcare system here in Ontario.
Okay, I think we do have one more question under healthcare, so I think if we could move on to that one. We're going to begin, this question will first be answered by Stacy Tankard of the Green Party. The question is as follows. Staff from the Kitchener Downtown Community Health Centre are very concerned about the absence of public dental programs for adults and seniors who can't afford private dentists. What does your party propose to address this ongoing and escalating issue? Again, to begin, Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. This is something actually the Green Party has been advocating for years, to include dental pharmacare coverage within the boundaries of OHIP. So I'm really pleased that the government is finally starting to move forward with this. So we do support those programs. I think additionally, You know, unfortunately, one of the biggest determinants of health is actually poverty. And so we have to also address some of the underlying issues that are related to some of the health issues that people face. So the Green Party is also the only party that is pushing to immediately start the implementation of a full income guarantee for individuals who are living below the poverty line. And I think that that in and of itself could go a long way to addressing some of these issues and allowing us to concentrate on helping to make people healthy and not always having to be reactive in our health care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. In fact, some of these individuals with the Downtown Community Health Center have come to see me on a number of occasions to advocate for dental care for all ages, not just seniors. And I told them that I would go to bat for them. I would work very hard to see this through, and I'm very pleased to let you know that in the 2018 budget, we did deliver this. Dental health is tied to overall health, and it's a determinant. So the fact that we can deliver this, I think, is going to have an impact on overall health for people in our community. I'm disappointed again that the NDP and that the Conservatives voted against this, but it is in our budget, and we're moving forward with it.
Now to Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
I'd like to start from a place of gratitude. I think it's absolutely wonderful that in the Liberal budget in 2018 we will have dental care. That's lovely. However, I think that it's been a determinant for health for a very, very long time, and people have struggled to try and pay for dental care for ages. So it's unfortunate that after we put forward our platform, a decision was made to include it in theirs. So for the Ndp platform, there's two big pieces I'd want to point out. The Ontario Public Dental would be one program to make sure that every senior who may not have dental included in their retiree benefits would have access, and making sure that every single person who's on social assistance would also have access to dental care. These are populations that are often forgotten in people's platforms, but so we've had to make sure that we've created something that would ensure that they are central in this decision. There would also be, through the Ontario benefits, a requirement that every single employer offers dental benefits at a minimum that would be set up. So we would be adjusting the employer standards in order to ensure that that's there, because it's unfortunate when people do have full-time jobs, but it doesn't include dental because of the price. And though they're doing okay in one area, they're left again without dental, despite their hard work and all that they bring to our economy and our communities.
Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC Party.
I think seniors in general, life has just become so unaffordable that they're struggling on all kinds of levels. The cost of living has gotten so high. We are supporting a dental plan for low-income seniors. They've worked, they've contributed to the Ontario economy. They deserve to be treated with respect, and we know that if they don't get the dental care that they need when they need it, they end up in the hospitals and it becomes a worse issue. So we are very committed to dental care for low-income seniors. And to Stacey's point as well, the guaranteed income, we're supporting the pilot, and we feel that we need to look at that for sure. Thank you.
Okay, we now have the opportunity for rebuttal. Diane?
Thank you. So by way of clarity, just to offer, our previous healthcare minister, Dr. Eric Hoskins, actually began a review and a discussion within our caucus of providing dental in 2015. He and I had some very good chats in the hallways of Queen's Park about why can't we do it sooner. But it was about costing it and ensuring that we could fit this into our budget. So again, by way of clarity, this was not a last-minute thing or borrowed from anyone. We've been talking about this for at least 3 years within our caucus.
Is there any follow-up, or we can move on? Okay. Sounds like we'll move on. We're now going to begin with the education portfolio. The first question will be answered by Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party. That question as follows. The education funding formula for K through 12 has been an ongoing issue for close to 2 decades. While all parties generally agree the current system is not working, no major changes have been implemented. What are your party's proposals for changing the education funding formula? Do you support a moratorium on school closures until the funding formula is changed? Diane.
So in terms of a moratorium, we put that in place so that we can look at and review what schools we have, what we support, where they're needed and not. It's always a very difficult decision when you choose to shut down a school. However, I can tell you that we have built over 800 schools since 2003, and we have repaired about 850 of them. Again, it's a very difficult decision when you're looking at which schools to keep open and which ones not to keep open. One of my colleagues who's in the Durham area, he said that they shut down a school that had 38 students. They were keeping the school open with only 38 students. They were busing them to another school because they didn't have a gym. So they shut that school down, and actually the parents and the students and the teachers were happy at that school. They got shifted to another school that was only 5 kilometers away. So yes, I would say that we need to take a very serious look at the schools that we have, how we fund them, and whether to keep them open or not.
To Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
The NDP agrees that it's imperative, in fact, I would say a crisis, and that we need to look at the funding formula. But we need to look at the funding formula because the teachers have been talking to us about the need to look at the funding formula for so many years. I was just at an event, it would be a few weeks back now. It all merges into one long day when it's election time. But we were at an event with 5 of the educational unions, and they were speaking to us about the amount of issues that are happening in the school, including, for instance, special education funding not going to special education students, but instead to other crucial items at the school that need to be fixed or repaired. It's part of why I took the pledge, Fix Our Schools. We need to have a moratorium on school closures. We have to figure out what's actually going on and make sure that we rethink the way that the funding formula is. I also think it's important that we not fund the EQAO because of the amount of mental health problems that that causes, not only for the students who are filled with anxiety when they have to be tested, but also for the teachers who recognize that that test isn't doing what it's supposed to. It's supposed to be checking the Ontario curriculum to ensure that we are actually graduating students who can prosper in the future. And instead, it's causing chaos and actually being tied in very interesting ways to funding for particular schools over others.
Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC Party.
So I do believe that we do have to always look at the funding formula, and I had 3 meetings as well with the teachers' unions, and they raised some important issues. They did talk about violence in the schools, and they talked about mental health issues, which we're committed to that funding that will go into the schools and support the teachers. And you know, there's been cuts to the special education teachers, and students deserve the best. The EQAO testing, needs to be reviewed. It is creating stress for the students and not producing the results that we'd like. So I am in favor of taking a look.
Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
We would agree that the moratorium on school closures should take place until we put in place a system where we have an actual plan for how to address education across this province. There are several issues, things like there's a disparity in the per child funding formula between elementary students and secondary students. We think that gap should be bridged. And expand the funding. And by doing that, that means that now we can move down the number of students in each classroom to limit it to about 22 students. In terms of looking at the schooling system in a long-term sense, I think that it's time that we have a conversation about all of the duplication that's happening across our boards. We have 4 school boards right now, and a lot of administration, busing, schools are being duplicated because of that. We would like to see one public and French, English and French school board where we can make sure to put all of those savings that amounts to somewhere in the order of $1.5 billion back into the classroom to increase the amount of teaching assistants that we have, increase the number of teachers, increasing the number of guidance counselors. All of those things mean that we will end up with healthier students that receive a better education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. If not, we can move on to the second. Everyone's good with that? Okay, we'll move on to the second question in the education portfolio. This will first be answered by Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP. The question is, could you outline your party's proposal for post-secondary funding reform, in particular with respect to tuition? Again, Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
Thank you. Post-secondary, discussions around post-secondary are actually quite near and dear to my heart and very, very interesting. When it comes to rethinking post-secondary, I think it's important for us to be honest about the impact that happens in that sector when we've gone for years with freezes. So some of what's happening on campuses is that the majority of the course loads for all of the disciplines, to be honest, are being taught by contract staff members, which is part of why you'll hear bits and pieces of details of strikes, etc., because it's unfair. With the contract academic staff members, you do end up in a situation where they gain a whole ton of experience, but because they don't gain research, for instance, experience, they aren't qualifying for the long-term jobs, tenured positions, et cetera, to provide the kind of education that we do need. I do think that it's important, and the NDP is committed to ensuring that there is an influx of funding for post-secondary so that we can start to lift that freeze and begin to deal with some of the core issues, which for me means that we are producing graduates who are ready for the workforce, who are thinking creatively because we're in a new economy, and professors who are taking joy and pleasure in the work that they do.
Now to Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party.
So regarding the funding, the only change that we would make is we would attach the funding to freedom of speech. I think it's important that people have the ability to express their views, and it's also, I want to talk about a little bit about students leaving high school and elementary school. I think we need to work harder to give them the best education and support the teachers so they are prepared for that post-secondary education.
Thank you. Now to Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Ultimately, the Green Party has a dream that education would be free for students. We are also realistic, so we know that that can't happen today. But we would like to at least step back what students are paying to the national average and tie it to inflation so that students don't have these wild jumps year to year in the tuition that they do have to pay. We also need to work to find a plan where any borrowing that students need to do against education doesn't have these huge costs and interest rates associated with them. And we also believe in helping to support some of the contract faculty that are at some of our secondary institutions, because otherwise that's what ends up leading to the strikes that have such an impact on the students here.
Thank you. Now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. So I think that the greatest way to address funding and affordability is what we have done by bringing in free college and university tuition for low and middle income families. And so if you're earning under $90,000 a year, you're going to get to go to university or college for free. This just started this past school year, and I can tell you that 235,000 students took advantage of this, including 13,000 single moms. This is going to change their lives. They want to be trained, educated. They're setting a great example for their children, showing how you can turn your life around. And we need to have an educated workforce, especially in this community where we've got 3,000 tech sector jobs that we need to fill, 2,000 in advanced manufacturing. Now, you heard mention of strikes. Last fall, I can tell you that I voted in favor of back-to-work legislation to end a college strike. There were 500,000 college students who were at risk of losing their school year. The NDP has said, Andrea Horwath has said, that she would never, ever introduce back-to-work legislation. Had she been the Premier of Ontario, those 500,000 students would still be on, well, they'd be out of the classroom because the teachers would be on strike. They would have lost their school year. I think that this is very rash. It's ideological. So if she will not order people back to work when they're at a stalemate, and that's the only time you can do it, are we going to have education strikes, garbage strikes, transit strikes? This is a real fear that we need to confront. And I will tell you that I respect collective bargaining. I was a member of a union for 33 years. They ensure a fair distribution of profits, a fair and humane workplace. However, when you're at a stalemate and nobody's budging, you have to consider back-to-work legislation. The NDP has said they never would.
We now have the opportunity for rebuttal. Lora Mae Lindo.
It's two things sort of combined into one. My current job as the Director of Diversity and Equity has me on the administration side of the institution. So when I was on the opposite end, when I was doing my master's and PhD, I had a particular idea of what would happen for the administrators, what kinds of conversations they would have, the joy that they would feel for working with unions, because unions are there for the people. Once I got over to the admin side and had to figure out what that dynamic looked like, I realized that it's very, very possible that the strike that I was a part of at York University some years ago wasn't because of the students or the contract staff members, but was because the administration was not willing to come to the table authentically and honestly. And because now I'm doing that job, unfortunately, I have to tell you that that's true. If Andrea Horwath, let's do this again. When Andrea Horwath is the Premier, the question wouldn't be, do we force everyone back to work under the same conditions that they have this freedom to actually speak out against, but that power would be used to ensure that the institution sat at the table. In the current strike, they refused to do so.
Okay, I think we're going to, just because we got off topic there, and I think points were made, that we'll move on, and we are moving on from the education portfolio into jobs and the economy. The first question will be addressed first by Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party. That question, quite simply, what is your party's position on the minimum wage? Again, Mary Hannon Thorne.
Well, again, we go back to affordability. Life in Ontario has just over the last 15 years become incredibly unaffordable. And we're going to start off by not taxing people who are making minimum wage. The Liberals have raised the minimum wage. We've seen that they've lost jobs. My son's 18 years old. He struggled to find a job, part-time job. Some of his friends who were working lost their jobs. You know, it's important to make Ontario more affordable so people can live, and we're maintaining the $14 minimum wage, but we will not be increasing it to the $15. There's other ways to make life more affordable, and we're gonna work on that.
Stacey Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. I think that something that I could never endorse is making life more affordable off the backs of the poverty of other people. And so I support the minimum wage, and I would encourage us to move actually towards a living wage, which is slightly higher. But I understand and appreciate that this makes it difficult for some of the small and medium-sized businesses. And so the Green Party wants to help with reducing some of the payroll taxes so that it's easier for businesses to afford to make those changes in their payroll systems.
Now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. I support the minimum wage, and I want to see it go up to $15 an hour come January 1st. But if the Conservatives get into power, they have said that they will not do this. I was proud to stand in the legislature and vote in favor of this, and I knew I had made the right decision when a few weeks ago I was in a Tim Hortons. A woman standing behind the counter who was pouring my coffee and working the register, she leaned forward and she said to me that she was 61, she was a widow, her husband had died recently, he had not left much for her, she was putting in full-time hours, and she was regularly going to the food bank to make ends meet. But she said since I got this raise, and she was earning about $450 a week, now it's about $550 a week, she wasn't having to go to the food bank anymore. She could afford affordable and reasonable food. And she leaned forward, and in a quiet voice, she didn't want her supervisor to hear, she said, "Thank you." And that's the reason why we raised the minimum wage. Now, for small businesses who are coping with this, we have lowered their corporate tax rate by 22%. So that goes a long way in helping them through all of this. But I believe that it is the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. And if you can't do this when the economy is booming like it is now, we are at 5% unemployment in Ontario, even lower than Waterloo Region. If you can't do this now, when can you do it? Thank you.
Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
Thank you. The NDP also supports $15 minimum wage, but it was interesting. I was reviewing some of my notes and thinking about the debate today, and I realized that in 1998, I made $15 an hour at my first full-time job because I spoke French. And other people were making a little bit, well, actually a lot less at the time, doing the same job in English. So if in 1998 I'm making $15 an hour because I'm bilingual, in the grand scheme, when I think of the future and hope for the future, $15 an hour is really next to nothing. In fact, when I've spoken to people at the doors, they've said to me, even at $15 an hour, they cannot afford to live in Kitchener Centre. They can't afford to pay for their groceries. They're not sure if they're going to be able to pay for their rent. They're not sure how many of their prescription drugs they can actually take. They don't know if they're going to be able to pay for them for any of the money that they would need for the needs that they have, clothing, et cetera, et cetera. I have to agree that affordability on the backs of those that are most vulnerable is unacceptable, and that a move towards a community that's healthy and strong has to be a move towards a government that you can trust to take up some of that, to upload some of those stressors. For instance, with Pharma care, with daycare that's actually affordable so that people can sort of even it out. For small businesses, it also means recognizing that some of the government initiatives that will help to bring the bottom of our communities up will actually make it easier for you to afford $15 an hour for the employees that you have. And that's coming from some of the small business owners that I've spoken to who are right here in Kitchener Centre.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for rebuttal. I'll begin with Mary Hannon Thorne.
Hi, I just want to say that this happened quickly and without consultation to businesses. They weren't prepared for the increase. There's no collaboration. I also want to say that, you know, with the high gas prices, the high hydro costs, the cost of food, the cost of living, that's not helping people on minimum wage get ahead. So that's not the appropriate way to do it.
Diane Ver Neil.
So, Mary, just for your information, consultations went on for 2 years led by the Ministry of Labour. 5,000 employers, employees, and unions were consulted in all of this. And by the way, this promise by Doug Ford that he's not going to have people who are earning the minimum wage pay income tax, they already don't at that level. So that to me is an empty promise.
Yeah, Mary.
I just want to say, Diane, that as I'm knocking on the doors, 12,000 doors that I've knocked, people are saying, I feel like I need a part-time job on top of my full-time job. I can't afford to pay my bills. I'm struggling to pay my gas bill. I'm struggling to pay my hydro bill. My insurance has not gone down like they promised. That was a stretch goal, and they're struggling. That's not the Ontario I believe in.
Okay. Yes, yeah,
Well, if the Conservatives had voted in favor of increasing the minimum wage, of free medicine for children and seniors, a drug and dental program for all Ontarians, a free preschool for 2.5-year-olds to 4.5-year-olds, and many other measures, the PCs said no to all of that. Perhaps those people might be telling you that life could be more affordable.
Okay, we'll allow a quick reply and then we'll move on.
Quick reply. Our whole platform is about affordability. You've had 15 years.
Okay. And we are going to move on still in the jobs in the and the economy portfolio. The next question will be answered first by Stacy Tankard of the Green Party. Employers in Waterloo Region and across Ontario have expressed concerns around other provisions of Bill 148, such as new rules on public holiday pay. What additional changes will your party make to the Employment Standards and Labour Relations Act? Again, to Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. I too have heard some of those issues expressed by some of the small employers that I've spoken with. And it does seem that the equation that they're using to calculate holiday pay seems to be not only more complicated, but is also something that is really more challenge, it leads to a lot more challenge in terms of small businesses meeting those payment needs. And so that one we would actually prefer to roll it back to closer to how it was before, where you're averaging over a longer period of time to find out exactly what people, how to calculate the pay on holiday hours.
Now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. So before, during, and after Bill 148 was implemented, I met with a long list of stakeholders both in Kitchener Centre and at Queen's Park in Toronto. So Bill 148, as you know, addresses things like low pay. We've raised the minimum wage, and it looks like at things such as precarious work and vacation pay. I am willing, moving forward, to continue having these discussions, and if they have certain concerns, I think that we need to be willing to sit down and look at these issues and look at ways that we can make this work for everyone. But realizing that we need to find a balanced approach. We have a very strong economy right now, and we need to find solutions that do work for everyone.
Lora Mae Lindo of the Ndp.
There's a couple different things, some of which I touched on in earlier questions, but what keeps resonating in my mind is that because of past governments, and this is for such a long time, every solution just feels like a Band-Aid. And so what it makes me think about is the need for us to sort of shift what we're trying to do. And what we're really trying to do, and what I take pride in with our platform, is build healthy communities. Communities where everybody, the people that are working in the small businesses as well as their employees, can thrive. And that means the plan to have dental care made affordable. If you can't afford that, then there's the Ontario benefit that would also provide this opportunity to have dental for everybody. If everybody was able to feel that quality of life and come into work with that, I do think that that would shift the way that we're thinking about things. And where my worry is that some of the platform pieces from my colleagues doesn't have the broader vision and is instead just sort of a Band-Aid on issues that have happened in the past, and in the future when we have to think about the rising costs around us, etc., we're going to be right back here with the same questions ahead of us, and nothing has actually changed.
Now to Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC Party.
Thank you. I've also been hearing from businesses about Bill 148 and some of the difficulties that they're facing. Some feel that they've not, again, had consultation. Some feel that the interpretation is difficult and there isn't support while the bill is being implemented. I've actually heard businesses say we feel like we're being treated like criminals because there's people dropping in and these investigations, and we value our employees. They have good relationships. They want to treat their employees well. I think we need to reduce the red tape that happens. We need to attract business. We need to keep them here and keep them employing people. And I think the cost to business is very high. Again, I refer back to the hydro costs. You know, we need to encourage business to want to stay open in Ontario.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. Diane?
Businesses are staying open in Ontario. We've added almost 1 million jobs in this province since the recession. That's 500 jobs a day. They are working in companies from border to border, and right here in this community where we're thriving in the tech sector, advanced manufacturing, business is booming in Ontario. In fact, I'm going to borrow a line from Art Sinclair with the Chamber. Art, you appeared before SCFIA, the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs, and I sat on that committee before going into Cabinet, and you made a wonderful comment, and if I may, I'm going to quote you. You said at the time that the Ontario economy right now is smoking hot, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Lora?
I don't know if this is considered a rebuttal or if it's just a thought. We're in a room of friends. I think what actually attracts businesses to our community is creative thinking, creative problem solving, and thinking differently about some of the issues that we are faced with. So things like the cluster strategy, which forms part of the Ndp Platform, help in that regard. Not too long ago, I was visiting with Communitech. The president had contacted me to show me around and show me some of the amazing work that they were doing there. They work with startups, they work with large organizations and corporations, and they help them free of charge to grow, to expand the businesses that they have. And in that setting, everything is an open concept where the kinds of issues that might be plaguing us at the moment are discussed across businesses so that we can start to germinate some innovative thinking around what we need to do to problem solve in this community. I think that because of maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but because of the amount of issues that are piling and piling and piling because of the long-standing rising of costs over the course of the last 15 years or so, we end up in a situation where it's tiring to think creatively about things. We don't think that there's any hope, and we just sort of look for something that's whatever it is that would be considered, let's say, an easy fix, as opposed to the long term, how do we change this and how do we make sure that we keep the companies here who want to stay. One of the ways that they do that at Communitech is they have somebody whose role is to actually take the business leaders that are working at Communitech into the Kitchener community so that they start to give back. And in their giving back, that's where we have us, if we're creative, that we could bring forward. If small business owners and medium business owners want to come and chat with me about ways that we can just ask them to come to help us with some of these kinds of issues, then they too can be using the space that they're taking in Kitchener Centre to bring change right here.
Okay, we'll have a brief wrap up here from Diane and we'll move on.
And I'm glad you mentioned Communitech. It's one of my favorite places. They exist because of the Ontario Liberal government, having invested $25 million in them as a hub back in 2009. In that time, they've managed to launch 2,600 companies, each one averaging about 3 to 5 employees. But of course, there are the that we call the fast runners that have scaled up that we're very proud of. And I enjoy talking to Ian Klugman and getting frequent updates, and he lets me know how imperative it is that the Ontario Liberal government gets it when it comes to the tech sector. We support them and we know the value that they play in our ecosystem here and how they help businesses to scale up.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. And if I have my order correct, this one will be answered first by Diane Ver Neil. Analysts now predict deficits for the current fiscal year and for 5 to 6 years in the future. What does your party propose to address the ongoing budgetary deficits in Ontario? Again, to Diane.
So when we came to power in 2014, the government that I serve with, we were on the tail end of the recession. We set a goal to balance the budget by 2017, 2018, and we kept that promise. This year, we do have a modest surplus of $600 million. But we have stakeholders who are telling us right now that we have a deficit in care, a deficit in child care, senior care, and in mental health. We've made a very deliberate decision to invest in care in Ontario. We do have a path to balance by 2025, and I think if you look at the other platforms, you will see that both the PCs and the NDP are going to be running deficits for 3 to 4 years as well. But I'm very confident to see that we do have a path to balance. In the past 40 years, we've had 8 balanced budgets, 5 of them by Liberals and 3 by Conservatives. So there's the math for you.
Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
Just a few days ago, there was a Maclean's article, and Don Drummond, who's the former Senior Vice President, Chief Economist at TD Bank, he took a look at each of the platforms to try and figure out where folks were when it came to the deficit. It was a little bit difficult at the time with the Conservatives because they hadn't released much of their platform, so he had to sort of take it bits and pieces of what Doug Ford had said. So I don't know if things would change much, though I don't think so from what I've read. But what was discovered was that, yes, everybody would have a deficit, but the NDP would have the smallest deficit, the Conservatives would have the greatest, actually 2 times. The idea for the NDP is that we would be, in 3 years, we would be bringing ourselves into a place where we would be also moving towards balance. I do think that it's important for us to also note, though, that it's about the broader vision, and so small businesses, families and what they need to have a higher quality of life, healthcare, issues that we're going to be inheriting from past governments have to be incorporated in the way that we see our fiscal plan. And so, yes, we will have a deficit. Yes, it makes sense that everybody will, given what we've been going through. But it's great to know that the plan that we have will be moving to balance quite soon.
Mary Hannon Thorne of the PC Party.
Well, I can start off by saying nobody seems to know what the numbers are, so it's very hard to, the other 2 parties are making commitments and promises and throwing out numbers, and there's so many discrepancies in their numbers that nobody really knows what's the truth and what's not. There's holes in both platforms. So every one of our promises is absolutely costed, and we're going to find 4 cents on every dollar in efficiencies. And I want to make sure that's clear. It's not a cut, it is efficiencies. So when my husband and I once a year look at our cable bill, do we still watch that channel? If not, we don't need it. That's exactly how government should be treated. We want to respect the taxpayer's dollar. We work so hard. Ontarians work so hard for every penny they earn. And again, with the unaffordability, it's our job to make sure that we respect every penny we get from our taxpayers.
Stacy Tankard of the Green Party. My apologies.
Thank you. So the Green Party actually is the party with the lowest predicted deficit. We included the financial accounting officer numbers of deficit estimates, which are higher than those included in the NDP or Liberal budgets. And the way that we've managed to do that is that we're willing to have a conversation about some of the revenue tools that we could be bringing in order to pay for these programs that we desperately need. We agree that we should be moving forward with these programs and that the programs can benefit us financially over the long term. And so it makes a lot of sense to do it. Some of the things that we've talked about bringing in, for example, we practically give away some of our resources, our mining and so on. We only receive about 1.5% of the benefits that corporations make off of those resources. We can move that up to a rate that's about equivalent to Saskatchewan and bring in over $1 billion there. We would also cut the unfair hydro tax, hydro cuts, which are really poor what I believe are really poor ways of investing, and instead replace it with making better investments in hydro that actually get to the base of the problem that's leading to our hydro bills being too high. Sorry.
Okay, we now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. If we can begin, Diane.
Okay. So, Mary, it must be challenging to know what the numbers are because your leader has still not put out a platform that is costed. One thing he has promised is $6 billion in cuts. And if you talk to anybody in Treasury Board, this is the department in government that decides what to spend money on and what not to spend money on. The only way to achieve $6 billion in cuts, and I actually think it's going to be more than that, is to do two things. You're either going to fire people or you're going to cut essential services. So who is Doug going to fire? And what's he going to cut? He needs to come clean with this. When the PCs were in power last, they fired nurses, they fired water inspectors, then we had Walkerton. I would like to know, we need to be informed by the decisions that he's going to make. Where is he going to find these so-called efficiencies? Come clean and tell us what you're going to cut and who you're going to fire.
I'm very happy you asked that question. So again, just to make it very clear, it's efficiencies. Nobody's going to lose their job. There's not going to be one single cut. The Auditor General easily found $1 billion in spending, wasteful spending. Like I said, 12,000 doors I've knocked on. I asked the same question. Do you think you can find 4 cents on every dollar? Do you think government wastes 4 cents on every dollar? If we look at the past scandals of the Liberal government, if we add that mismanagement up, there's a lot of money right there. So just to be clear and concise, Doug is not prepared to fire anybody, but he also doesn't want to come up with numbers and some costed platform when we can't even figure out what your numbers are or the Ndp numbers are. So our promises are all costed. We're confident that we can do that, and he doesn't want to commit to anything that he can't keep.
Lora Mae Lindo.
So I'm just a little worried, to be perfectly honest. There's two different things that I've been hearing in the past debate. One is from a different question, and now this one. When we talk about inefficiencies, there seems to be a lack of clarity about what it is that we're talking about. I don't know how we can just cut things without cutting the people, and historically, as Diane had mentioned, that's what happens. Nurses, teachers, frontline staff are the ones to go because their work is what is considered inefficient, and so there is nowhere else to find that $6 billion. But the same kind of strategy has happened with this notion of tying funding to freedom of speech, which actually, in actuality, becomes a space for people under a different name to be allowed hate speech. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that I'm nervous about transparency. I'm nervous about the fact that I actually can't provide the strongest rationale for why the people in Kitchener Centre are saying that they are scared of Doug Ford when I'm knocking on the doors to you today, because I don't know what he's going to actually do. There's a couple different things, a couple little highlights, a couple little numbers, but what that means in practice, nobody knows. So I go back to the beginning. At the doors, people are scared of the inefficiencies that are being cut because those are the nurses in Kitchener Centre, the teachers in Kitchener Centre, the small business owners in Kitchener Centre, etc.
Okay, we'll allow Diane quickly and then to Mary quickly.
Okay, Mary, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but by law in Ontario, before an election, the Auditor General does a review, and the numbers are out there, and she operates independently. So you've got the facts, you've got the numbers. Where's his platform?
The platform is ontariopc.ca. It's all costed. Maybe after the debate, you're welcome to take a look at it. I just wanted to address my colleague Lora Mae Lindo's comments about radical thinking and freedom of speech, and I find that kind of sad when some of the candidates from the NDP have put down the veterans and insulted the police that work so hard. I'm actually shocked that she brought that up. And this morning, as I was getting dressed to leave the House, I heard about Cornerstone. There's an investigation, and the Liberals are asking about it, and I want to know too. Thank you.
We are getting pretty sufficiently off track here, but Is there any more requests for a rebuttal at this point in time, or shall we move on? I think because a new thing was brought up, we can have one quick rebuttal and then we're going to move on.
Yeah,
okay.
I can be very fast. If radical thinking means looking out for the health of my community, then call me a radical. If radical thinking means making sure that every single person, no matter their age, has access to health care, to the Universal Pharma Platform, sure, call me radical. What's not radical, or maybe it is asking for evidence of what you're going to do when you're in power that I can understand as an everyday citizen in Kitchener Centre, so that I can make a real choice about the kind of Ontario that I want when I go to the polls on June 7th.
Okay. I think, yes, it is time for another question, and this one will first, again, be addressed by Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP. The question as follows. The Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce is proud to be a key partner with the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region. We know that employers seeking to hire immigrants and refugees to address labor market needs face challenges. There is a mismatch between skills in the immigration system and the local workforce needs. If elected, are you committed to working with the Immigration Partnership and the business community to address these gaps? Again, we'll begin with Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
The short answer is yes, 110%. It's actually work that I used to do prior in some capacity, and it's something that I believe in strongly as an individual and that the party believes in as well. I had a meeting today actually from somebody from YMCA who was talking to us about the exact same thing. Not only is it that the adults that are immigrating here need particular training when it comes to what they sometimes call soft skills, etc., when they want to enter into the job market here, but their kids do as well, language barriers, etc. I've spoken to people at Reception House who have talked about innovative ways of teaming up with businesses to include things like English language training in the kind of work that they do. And I'm really proud that the NDP has a platform that includes funding for and strategies around advanced training, change of career training for somebody who's coming in and needs to move into something new now that they're here, because that kind of support it's so important to building the healthy communities that we need.
Next to Mary Hennen Thorne of the PC Party.
So I actually volunteered on the Immigration Partnership Belonging Pillar, and it was a great experience. You know, immigration is very important, and it's very important that we have jobs for the people that come to their community, come to our community, so that they can have jobs and live their dreams out just like we all do. And there is a gap in our community that we have to work on, that's for sure. You know, we have a shortage in trades, and I don't think we're promoting them enough. And I think sometimes when the immigrants come here, they struggle with their equivalency, and we're a barrier, government's a barrier. We need to get through that faster and better so that they can get into good paying jobs and live out their dream like we all do.
Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We're quite happy to work with them on that. I think that we need to do whatever we can to help improve the successes that people achieve when they get here, because that helps build our communities and strengthen our economy. So it makes sense.
Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. So this is an immigration issue, a federal issue. It touches us provincially, and I can tell you that I work very closely with our federal partners on a number of files. Absolutely, we need to do this. I will tell you that I've already been working with the KW Multicultural Association, Reception House, and MCCs, helping newcomers to access resources and training and skills so that they can be integrated into our job market. More than ever, we need to have a skilled workforce to fill the many jobs that we have open here, and we need to support our newcomers. Recently, the Government of Ontario welcomed and supported 1,200 new Syrians, for instance, and we need to help them to improve their skills and so that they can find good-paying jobs and be part of our community.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. If not, we can move into the Next portfolio we're looking at is Municipal Affairs. This question will first be addressed by Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party. The question: provincial legislation has created a situation where the region of Waterloo cannot openly tender construction projects to all qualified contractors and their workers. This is costing taxpayers from 10 to 30% more on projects and not allowing full participation on projects. If elected, will you commit to changing the definition in provincial legislation of who should be considered a construction employer? Again, the question first to Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you. Absolutely. I know that this has been an ongoing situation for a long time, the fair and open tendering. It certainly does cost our municipalities a lot of money for projects, and a lot of the times that people are commissioned to do the projects here don't live in our city and aren't spending those dollars back into our local economy. So that is a problem. I do believe that it does need to be opened, it does need to be reviewed. Again, it's really important that we have our local people and we're supporting our local economy that can bid on these jobs and be cost effective, absolutely.
Now to Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Yes, I do think that we need to, I think that this is sort of part of a bigger issue, that municipal governments in the province, or the province rather, isn't always engaging the municipal government to ensure that we're making the best solutions that can be adaptable within the specific context that the municipal governments face. And so that's something we would absolutely be willing to work with them on.
Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, by way of background, closed tendering is when an employer is bound to use unionized workers. There are some municipalities that are tied to these agreements, including right here in Waterloo Region. But if a municipality feels that it's wrongly bound to one of these agreements, it can apply for what's called a non-construction employer classification. This comes through the Ministry of Labour, through the Labour Relations Board. The curious thing is that on this issue, I heard about it once or twice during the 2014 election. Over the past 4 years in my constituency office and at Queen's Park, I've barely heard anything on this issue, and now you're asking this question now, which I'm happy to answer. I think that if this is going to go from being a back burner to a front burner issue, I'm willing to sit down and talk about this and to listen to all sides, and I know that there are many sides in this. There are those who favor open and closed tendering and not. So I'm happy to have that conversation.
Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
Thank you. I understand that this can be a complicated situation, a difficult situation on all sides. What I can tell you is that the NDP is committed to working with small businesses, that we're committed to creating good jobs for people here, and that the idea of thinking specifically about Kitchener Centre, sitting down and being able to have an open discussion about where some of these issues have arisen and what's happening next, I would be more than willing to sit down and have a discussion about that as well.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. Mary?
I just wanted to say that I know our Regional Chair Ken Sealing has fought for this to be changed, and I'm surprised when Diane Ver Neil says this is sort of the first, or she hasn't heard of it for a while. I have certainly heard about this over the last at least 4 years, and it's an issue that just keeps coming up. So again, I feel like maybe our community is not being heard.
Diane?
I would say that I have a great working relationship with Ken Sealing, and I'm going to miss him when he retires. He's not running again in the upcoming municipal election. He and I talk frequently on a great many issues. This issue we've talked about no times. He's never brought it up. And again, if this is an important issue for our community, whether it's with construction workers, company owners, or with municipal leaders, I'm happy to sit down and have that discussion.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Are we good to move on to the next question? Okay. We'll move on to question number 2 under the Municipal Affairs portfolio. The second question will be answered first by Stacy Tankard of the Green Party. The question is as follows: what is your priority for Waterloo Region? Two-way all-day GO service or high-speed rail? Also, what is your schedule for building and implementing this service? Again to Stacy. Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. Actually, I don't see it as necessarily a choice. I think that we need to get moving on our transit solutions right away. Something that's been frustrating to me is I've been going back and forth between here and Guelph, and there is just no way to do that in any reasonable sense. So we need to get people moving both within the city and between cities. And we are very supportive of something like a high-speed rail. We do have to take into account our rural communities and make sure that we're not causing additional problems. We've heard a little bit from farmers that that could be an issue. So we have to make sure that it's something that works for every community. So one of the things that the Green Party is talking about in addition to this, because it's great to promise all of this transit, and it's been promised for years and years and years, but it's not helpful to do so unless we're actually talking about how we can pay for it. So we believe that we should have dedicated revenue streams that go directly to building the transit that we need, because otherwise it just simply is not going to be built, it seems. Things like congestion charges, like what they've implemented in the UK, are something that can work really well for going into Toronto. Parking levies, those types of things can bring in enough money to actually help us move forward and create a long-term plan for building the transit that we need. Thank you.
Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
I would actually agree with Stacy. It's not one or the other. We're actually building out both concurrently. So where are we at right now? We doubled GO train service in 2016. We've got 8 trains going a day. We have an agreement in principle with CN Rail to shift them off of the Kitchener line and to get them a new bypass and put freight there. We are ushering in all-day two-way GO train service. The commitment for that is 2024. We're moving ahead with Canada's first high-speed train system. We are the only party that has committed to that and are costing that. $11 billion is already on the table, and we're in phase 1 of that with an environmental assessment. And Ontario has committed to fully paying for a new $43 million downtown transit hub. It's going to be where the GO trains and the LRT intersect. I'm really worried that if the Conservatives come to power that they're going to cancel that. Doug Ford has said that he's going to be reviewing all transit initiatives. We've already got that money on the table for them, and we want to see that go through. And we put $325 million into the LRT. That is the single largest transit investment in the history of Waterloo Region. So transit is a top priority for me. You asked about one or the other. No, we're doing both. And delivery is 2024 for all-day two-way GO train service, and for high-speed trains, 2025.
Lora Mae Lindo.
I can't help but think that really it's a question of political will. We've been waiting for so long and getting to and from our neighboring cities, getting back and forth to Toronto where a lot of people are working or along the way. We've been waiting far too long. In any case, our commitment is to a comprehensive transit strategy. So this would include, again, I think we're all in agreement mostly that it's not either or, it's a strategy that's needed. High-speed rail, so we'll continue with the environmental assessment so that every community is supportive of the idea. We'll fill the gaps. The GO train, we have to get two-way all-day GO going as soon as possible, because it's ridiculous that I sometimes say to my mom, you can come to visit me, but you may never get back. Which is lovely because Kitchener's awesome, but I don't know, she has friends in Scarborough. We will upload 50% of the public transit operating expenditures to the provincial government so that local municipalities can proceed with public transit expansions and improvements. That amounts to $60 million per year for the region. It's also important to note that because it's a bigger strategy, a broader strategy, it requires the provincial and the municipal governments to work more closely together. So it's not sort of one trying to do one thing and another trying to do another. We're working in harmony. And the regional transit strategy would also include making highways safer, because a lot of people are traveling on the highways. So bringing back public oversight and management of road maintenance is also a key part of the strategy.
So Mary Hannon Thorne.
I wrote down a lot of notes here. So first of all, absolutely, we're very committed to two-way go. You know, it's stifling our economy here. I'm hearing from the tech community. We desperately need it. It's an urgent cause. We desperately need it. Doug's committed to $5 billion in spending in transportation. As far as the LRT and Diane saying that we're looking to remove that money, absolutely not. We're very committed to keeping the
LRT not the LRT, GO train.
We'll have a chance for a rebuttal.
Very committed to the $325 million that's committed to the LRT. Anyway, the 401 is so congested. People are dying, and that's unacceptable. You know, we're committed to the high-speed rail. We're committed to the environmental study, and if elected, I'll be a huge advocate for these projects. They're a must. The Liberals have, it's like the announcement that keeps recycling. They've committed and committed and committed, and now it's 24, 25. You know, I hope so, but we're going to cut the red tape and work hard to make sure they're delivered on time and on budget. And absolutely, this is a must.
The candidates have the opportunity for rebuttal. Diane?
Thank you. So just to give you an understanding on the timeline and why it is taking so much time and why it is so complex, in recent years, on the Kitchener line that runs from Kitchener into downtown Toronto, we widened and replaced 16 bridges, 7 underpasses. We put in $76 million to buy 52 kilometers of track from Kitchener to Georgetown. We built a $16 million GO train and GO bus storage. It's on Shirley Avenue right across from Binghamans, along with the $43 million transit hub that I told you about. We're also building a new GO train station with a large parking garage that's going to be in Breslau. Up to 35 new bridges and roads for water crossings have to be built. We're relocating and modifying up to 17 hydro towers. We're relocating 3.4 kilometers of major gas lines, construction of new rail grade separation where the Kitchener line is going to cross the new bypass. We have to put in noise and vibration dampeners where required, and then electrify the whole thing once it's done. That's why it takes so much time.
Do you have any other rebuttals, or we can move on? Mary?
I just want to say again, what I'm hearing at the door is loud frustration that promises are being made and they're not being kept. And if this party thought that they couldn't commit to that timeline, then please don't promise it. Stick to your promises.
Okay, we will move on to the next question. This will first be addressed by Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party. The question as follows. Increasingly, employers across Waterloo Region, public and private, are concerned about rising housing costs and the impact of these costs on attracting skilled talent. How will your party address the rising cost of housing in Waterloo Region and Ontario? Again, to Diane Ver Neil.
So a few months ago, we brought in the Fair Housing Plan. This has 16 points, and we're looking at ways to make housing more affordable. So if you are renting, we have rent controls. If you are a purchaser of a house and you're putting down your first down payment on a new house, the land transfer tax has gone, the allowance on that, from $2,000 to $4,000. And these are just some of the measures that we're looking at to try to make housing more affordable. I know that there are some municipalities that are looking at the land transfer tax. The City of Toronto has the ability to impose this, and some other municipalities have looked at this. They're always looking for ways to try to raise revenue. However, I think that we need to be very careful moving forward. I know that there's a lot of realtors who are very much against this. And so we want to give municipalities the ability to raise money in other ways, but we need to think very seriously about the land transfer tax. These are a number of measures that we have that are helping people to make housing more affordable.
Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
I think this question is so important because we're living in Kitchener Centre where there are so many people that are starting to come in and have no place to stay. This was something that actually came up in the visit at Communitech as well, and on the doors when people are talking about sort of thinking forward about what our city is going to look like. Since the Liberals took power in 2003, there's been a wait list for affordable housing. It's actually grown 36%, which is interesting because that means that there's more people on the wait list than there are people in those affordable homes, which gives us a moment of pause. It's also important to note that there are seniors that make up such a large portion of that wait list. I bring this up because of this. We have a housing crisis in our midst. We have people, there was somebody I was talking to the other day who explained that they had just recently bought their home. It was their first home. They were homeless and they were living under a bridge that was sort of right behind their home. And they were worried by the time I got to the door about whether or not they could actually afford that home. If the people in Kitchener Centre are feeling that right now, it's a valid question to see where and what people are going to do to better those that are coming in to do business, etc. The NDP will make the necessary investments in affordable housing. The idea is to build 65,000 new affordable housing units over the course of 10 years. We'll work with partners such as the federal government, not-for-profit co-op sectors as well. We're also committing to building 30,000 new supportive housing units, which is very important because some people have sort of confounded the two, but supportive housing is a unit that also has access to health supports, mental health supports, etc. One of the pieces that people often forget is that many people that do come into Kitchener to do business might have, whether it's a partner or a parent or a child that needs particular supports, and those kinds of units being available to them would also allow them to see this as their home.
Mary Hennen Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party.
So there's no doubt that the housing costs have definitely gone up. And again, I go back to the affordability. You know, we're making everything so expensive. The hydro costs, again, are high. People have to, you know, to pay for that. Groceries, everything's gas, everything is really high. Part of our strategy is the mental health spending. We're gonna match the federal government's spending of $1.9 billion. We're gonna do $1.9 billion, and part of that will be supportive housing. But I want to touch a little bit on poverty. Poverty comes from things like the opioid crisis that we have. So we have to support people and get them healthy and into jobs so that they can support themselves and afford housing. The other thing too is we need to make sure that you know, we fill jobs like the trade so that people can have good paying jobs and afford housing. So these are some of the strategies that we're going to be working on.
Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
The Green Party's approach to this would be to have a requirement that 1 of every 5 housing units being built be an affordable unit, so below market rates. And we would work with developers to ensure that that there are maybe density benefits that they may receive so that they can offset some of those costs. But that means that we could have very quickly a much higher level of affordable housing opportunities. And this it spans so many different people that need this: new graduates, seniors who may want to downsize. So many people are looking, and this is something that I have been hearing very consistently on the campaign trail. One of the other approaches that I think could really help immediately make available a number of additional units is making zoning changes. So you can do things like allow for rental apartments or allow building smaller units than what we traditionally allow, cooperative housing, all of those other approaches. That means that we could approach this issue in creative ways and build solutions for the people that need them. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. Diane?
Thank you. This is an update for you. Just before we rose, we did pass legislation to to allow inclusionary zoning. This allows municipalities to have the right to mandate to their developers in new areas where they can, if they want to have inclusion of affordable housing. So we put that on the table for municipalities, and we encourage them to take advantage of that. Just in this past year, I was very pleased to preside over the creation of 77 new affordable housing units. They went in at KW Rehabilitation, Elmira Development Support Corporations, Menno Homes, Supportive Housing of Waterloo, the YWCA, and 430 Connaught Street. These stakeholders came to me and said that they needed to build out affordable housing, and we're working with them to fund them. That was at a cost of $8.1 million, and I know that we need more, and we're working together to make this happen.
Candidates, or we can move on to the next question, which we will do so. Okay, I'm going to move into the accountability and transparency portfolio. Just to let us know we are kind of nearing the finish line here, so we're almost through. This party will first be this question will first be addressed by Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP. The question is: each party makes campaign commitments. When a promise is broken, the electorate is understandably frustrated. If you are part of the governing party and your government breaks a commitment, how would you expect your leader to respond, and how will you respond as an MPP? Again, starting first is Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
These are fabulous questions.
I'd like to say that I created them all myself, but it's not the case.
No, these are really important, because that's exactly what I'm hearing as I'm going door to door, that people are frustrated. In fact, some people are saying they're not even going to bother to vote on June 7th because they have been promised so much and received so little. I still encourage them to vote, but I think it's important for us to be honest and transparent about that reality. If there's a campaign promise or a commitment that's not met, I actually think that my role as an MPP is to advocate for Kitchener Centre. When governments are providing platforms, they have to think broadly throughout all of Ontario, right? And that means that having particular issues come up within the region may or may not, people may not understand what that means. So my job has to be to go back and to speak to everybody about how important it is, ensure that it's on that priority list, etc. I think that one of the interesting things, though, with the NDP is that they've done a really great job of recruiting people who have to deal with accountability on a regular basis in the jobs that they do before they decided to run for office. And so this is something that from my character and my integrity in the work that I've done before, I'm always having to hold the leaders accountable in my institution. It's something that I have to do. I always hope that others are holding me accountable as well. So whether it's the leader holding me accountable to the promises and commitments that I'm making to folks in Kitchener Centre, or you, because this is your government, holding me accountable so that I can move forward in a way. This is a win for the people. This is a win for Ontarians. This is a win for Kitchener Centre. If we move forward with somebody who has to do this every day, and if I don't win, I'd still have to do it.
Next to Mary Hennen Thorne of the PC Party.
You know, accountability is very important, but I want to just say, first of all, that we are public servants when we're elected, and I think we've forgotten that. We are, the public is our boss, and it's really important that MPPs, keep that in mind. They are accountable to the public and should always be transparent. As I'm going door to door, one thing that I hear a lot of is Doug Ford, and what they say is, when he says he's going to do something, he really does it, and they're very proud of that point, and that's why they're supporting him. And he absolutely, I would expect him to hold me accountable, not that he'd need to, because I am that person. Accountability is very important.
Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you. This question really gets to the base of why I've decided to run for the Green Party, that I've become very frustrated with the way that politics has been done in provincially and federally as well. I think that part of the issue is a frustration with the underlying system that means that a very small number of people can actually vote and elect somebody into a majority government. But I think also it's about the expectations, or at some point, politics seem to move away from doing things for the good of the people in our communities, and instead to how do we get elected in the next election. And I would very much like to change that. I see the Green Party as being unlikely to form government in this election. But I think that what we could do is to hold the feet to the fire of the other parties and ensure that they are keeping the promises to the people in their communities who elected them. And I think that that is a really important role that we could play. Thank you.
Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
I think any government, whether it's federal, provincial, or local, when they come to power, it is their strong intention to keep their promises, and they do so as best they can. If you look at the record of the Ontario Liberal government, our promise was to have a progressive and a caring government, and I think that we've done that by delivering a minimum wage, OHIP plus, investing in our local businesses that are really contributing to the local prosperity of Waterloo Region, and all of the investments that we have made, and I rattled through that long list with you of what we've done for transit. Some other ways that you can have accountability and transparency. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can go to any MPP's website and you can see how they are spending your money. We have to post all of our expenses. That is there for your perusal. And also at the Ontario Legislature, we have an Integrity Commissioner and an Auditor General. They are there to operate independently, and they keep an eye on us. They keep us to account. So ultimately, I would say to you that all of you have the power of accountability when you exercise your vote, which you will do on June the 7th, I hope.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We now have the opportunity for a rebuttal. I'll also mention this is the last question going to be asked before we get to our closing remarks. And if we're still happy with getting on with that, we'll do so. Okay, so getting into our closing remarks, as mentioned off the top, we have 1 minute maximum. We will go in reverse order of the way we did the opening remarks. So closing remarks, we'll start with Stacy and end with Diane. Once again, you have 1 minute, and we can begin with Stacy Tankard of the Green Party.
Thank you again to everybody for coming here and listening to us today. I'm hoping that people will see that they do have another choice in this election, that we don't have to continue along with the status quo, the bickering that's been happening, and continuous situations where we're not always having promises being met. I think that we should start to move towards looking at some of the underlying issues that are actually creating the problems that we see, and looking for evidence-based solutions on how to fix them. I would truly like it if you considered voting for me on June 7th, Stacy Tankard. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mary Hannon Thorne of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you to the other candidates for their participation tonight, and thank you again to the Chamber and its partners for hosting. I'm very excited about the PC platform laid out on the OntarioPC.ca, which tackles affordability, represents taxpayers' money, and protects the public services Ontarians hold dear. I believe that the #1 duty, like I said before, of an MPP is to be a public servant, to be accountable to their constituents. Well, this includes fulfilling promises that we're going to keep. We're going to fix the hydro mess, restore accountability and trust in government, create and attract good jobs in Ontario, and end hallway healthcare and treat mental health issues that are so desperately needed. And I am very committed to serving the community. Thank you.
Now to Lora Mae Lindo of the NDP.
So I'd also like to thank you all for hosting, and to all of my colleagues. This has been a really interesting election time so far, and the questions have been phenomenal. I just actually want to tell a little story as my closing, and I'll be very quick. I wanted to let you know that part of what I believe is important in order to do this job is to think creatively. And why I think that is because I look to some very interesting places for that kind of creativity. I look to the artists and musicians that make a big part of our culture here at Kitchener Centre. I look to the small business owners who have found ways to actually navigate loads of issues that have come at them over the course of these years, and they've still found a way to keep those doors open and keep the economy going over here. And those people have taught me something, that the only way that I can do this job is if I build trust with each of you. And so the door knocking is super important for that, but more than anything, I want you to be able to take your time, look each of us up, make sure that you feel that the person that will be representing you on June 7th is somebody that you can go to and speak to about your issues. If you feel that you can't, actually sit down and have an open and transparent conversation, then that can't be the person that you bring in. And one of the things that makes that decision really critical is whether or not you feel that you can trust the leader of the party who is before you as well. So take your time. I have great faith in all of you that you'll make a decision that makes sense for Kitchener Centre, and I promise to be here to help no matter what happens.
Thank you. And now to Diane Ver Neil of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jeff. I think it's amazing and historic that we have 4 women who are sitting here this afternoon. Thanks to all of you for putting your name on a ballot and for going through the process. And it is a process, isn't it? So I have served as an Ontario Liberal for 4 years. So what's our record in that time? Our economy is booming. We have the lowest unemployment rate in almost 20 years. We're the only party with a plan for high-speed rail, which we need in this region. We've raised the minimum wage, so you don't have to try to raise your family on $11.40 an hour. We're covering tuition for over 235,000 students. We're providing free medicine for youth and for seniors. Preschool that's going to save families about $17,000 a year, a new drug and dental program for people who don't have coverage at work. We're hiring an additional 3,500 nurses, and our green energy plan gives you grants so that you can make your home or business more energy efficient. But I believe that actions speak louder than words, and the actions taken by my government have brought positive change to Ontario. This is such a crucial election. I urge you to choose a strong local voice that you know and trust. I am ready to keep working for you on June the 7th. Thank you very much. And thank you to you, Jeff, and to Rogers for this event today.
Yes, thank you to the candidates. That does conclude the debate. You made it through. I made it through. You guys made it a little tough on me, but that's okay. That's the sign of a good debate. Once again, thanks to the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce for hosting 4 candidate forums now. I would also like to thank Rogers Cable 20 for showing, having the ability to air these for anyone who wasn't able to make it. Again, to the candidates, it was a lively, a very respectful and smart debate. So I thank you for providing that. We would also like to thank the City of Kitchener for hosting, and of course everyone who was able to make it out today. If you are a resident of Kitchener Centre, the election day is rapidly approaching, so please make sure you are aware of your voting location. The Chamber and Rogers hope this forum provided some relevant perspectives and issues of your concern. Once again, thank you for coming and have a great evening.